Hundreds of thousands of GM drivers could be sitting on an engine that's about to fail, and most have no idea. Something's gone very wrong inside America's best-selling trucks and SUVs. Engines are dying too early. Repairs cost 5 figures, and the silence from GM is raising serious questions. The truth is, there isn't just one problem. It's a pattern, a story of hidden defects, shifting blame, and owners left to pay the price. Before you buy, sell, or service a GM V8, you need to know what's really happening under the hood. This matters because sudden loss of power at highway speed is a safety risk, and chronic oil consumption is a value killer. One defect can strand you without warning. The other can drain your wallet and push an engine toward early wear. Regulators treat the first as a potential safety issue. Courts treated the second as a warranty and consumer protection problem. Owners who understand the difference can position claims correctly, pick an exit strategy, and avoid bad repairs pushed by guesswork. So the real situation is this. Federal safety regulators opened a preliminary investigation into about 877,000 2019 to 2024 GM trucks and SUVs, with the 6.2-liter L87 after reports of connecting rod bearing failure that can seize the engine or punch a hole in the block with little or no warning. GM later issued a safety recall and stop sale on a subset of 2021 to 2024 vehicles to inspect and, if necessary, replace engines traced to manufacturing defects in crankshaft and connecting rod production. Separately, an older class action over Gen 4 5.3-liter oil consumption reached a court-approved settlement in October 2025. These are different mechanisms and different remedies, and confusing them will send owners down the wrong path. Which models actually deliver on durability, and which are at risk today? Why do some GM V8s fail without warning, while others just use too much oil? What steps protect you financially if you own one of these vehicles right now? Here is the plain story without hype. GM's small block family spans many generations and calibrations. Two issues dominate recent headlines. First is the Gen 4 5.3-liter Vortec oil consumption defect. It's centered on piston ring design, oil control, and crankcase ventilation behavior under certain operating conditions. Symptoms included frequent top-offs between oil changes, fouled plugs, and, over time, accelerated wear. That defect produced years of owner complaints, technical bulletins, and a long litigation arc. In October 2025, a federal judge approved a $150 million settlement in Sierra's VGM, covering certain owners in California, Idaho, and North Carolina. That case was about excessive oil consumption and premature engine wear. It was not about sudden bearing seizure in newer 6.2-liter engines. If your truck is an older 5.3-liter Gen 4 and you saw high oil use, your documentation pathway looks like that settlement, not the current L87 recall. Second is the newer L87 6.2-liter bearing failure story. In January 2025, NHTSA's Office of Defects Investigation opened PE 25-001 after 39 complaints describing sudden engine failure with no prior detectability. The population under review covered roughly 877,710 GM full-size trucks and SUVs from 2019 to 2024, with the 6.2-liter L87. The failure description was specific: connecting rod bearing wear leading to seizure or a rod through the block. After internal reviews and field data analysis, GM issued Safety Recall 25V-274 in April 2025, placed a stop delivery on affected units, and outlined inspections and engine replacements where necessary. That is a safety path, not a warranty path, because loss of propulsion can increase crash risk. If your VIN is in that campaign, you should expect inspection and a defined remedy at no charge once parts and procedures are ready. There is a third thread that often gets mixed into the conversation: AFM/DFM lifter collapse. For years, GM published technical service bulletins on misfire with codes like P0300 and ticking caused by active fuel management lifters that stuck, collapsed, or suffered internal locking pin damage. This lifter problem affected multiple engines and model years, often where AFM or DFM toggled cylinders on and off. The symptom set is different from the L87 bearing issue. You hear a tick, you feel a misfire, and you see codes before catastrophic failure. It is fixable with lifter and sometimes camshaft replacement, though it can be expensive. It sits between pure wear and a safety defect. Recognizing that distinction keeps owners from chasing the wrong fix. Owners also hear a lot about an $888 million settlement. That figure is widely repeated online, but it refers to GM's 2025 capital investment to build the next-generation small-block V8 at its Tonawanda propulsion plant, not a payout to owners. Multiple outlets and GM's own release confirm the $888 million is a factory investment tied to the sixth-generation V8 program starting later this decade. It is unrelated to the class action over oil consumption and unrelated to the L87 recall. Mixing those numbers confuses the public and dilutes real owner remedies. Now let's get into cause and effect in plain terms. Why would a modern 6.2-liter engine with tight machining tolerances and good filtration suffer bearing failure with little warning? Manufacturing variation is the short answer. The recall filings point to contamination and quality escapes in crankshaft and connecting rod production prior to mid-2024. A small population with out-of-spec parts can run quietly for thousands of miles, and then wear at the bearing interface in a hurry, especially under sustained load. Once the overlay is compromised, the bearing goes metal to metal. Oil pressure drops too late to save it. That is why drivers reported sudden loss of motive power without any prior tick or misfire. The fix is not an oil weight change or a software reflash. It is inspection for batch traceability and replacement when measurements or history indicate risk. Why did the older 5.3-liter consume oil? That has a different root. Design choices around piston rings and PCV flow made some engines sensitive to deposits and oil aeration over normal service intervals. Under certain duty cycles, oil would bypass the rings, burn, and foul plugs. Owners who missed top-offs ran low. Low oil is a wear accelerator over long service windows that produced the complaints behind Siqueiros. That is why the lawsuit framed it as a warranty and consumer protection issue, not an immediate safety recall. The court's approval of a $150 million settlement in 2025 closed a long legal chapter, though it applied only to certain states and circumstances. Lifter collapse fits somewhere else. Active cylinder deactivation saves fuel, but the added parts introduce failure modes, locking pins that stick, lifters that collapse, and cams that take abnormal wear. GM published bulletins that guide dealers to confirm misfire, examine the lifter bores, inspect push rods, and replace the affected parts. That is a different noise, a different DTC footprint, and a different repair than a seized rod bearing. Knowing which symptom stack you have is everything. If you own a 6.2-liter L87 in the 2021 to 2024 window, the practical move is to check your VIN against 25V-274. Watch for owner mail timing and ask your service department about the stop sale and phased recall instructions. The documents say dealers were notified April 24, 2025, with owner letters planned to begin in June 2025. If your truck sits in inventory, it should not be delivered until the inspection is complete. If you already own it, you are in the inspection queue. Keep service records and avoid modifications that could complicate a claim. If you own an older Gen 4 5.3-liter with oil consumption, the settlement guidance is different. You need mileage logs, oil change receipts, and any dealer work orders showing consumption tests or plug fouling. If you are in one of the covered states from Siqueiros, you follow the claim path outlined by the settlement administrators. If you are not, you still use that case as a map for what evidence moves a claim forward. Consistent documentation and contemporaneous complaints. If your symptom is lifter tick and misfire, your goal is fast diagnosis. The longer a collapsed lifter hammers a cam, the broader the repair. Ask for a lifter oil control diagnosis with DTC capture, not just a generic top-end noise note. The GM bulletins list clear checks. Make sure those steps go in the file. That protects you if the problem recurs. Let's talk simple math so the decisions are rational. A modern replacement V8 can run $12,000 to $18,000 with labor at retail. An engine inspection under a safety recall is free. If your VIN is in 25V-274 and the inspection flags it, a documented engine replacement through the campaign preserves value and avoids out-of-pocket cost. Avoid independent teardown before a recall inspection unless the truck is immobile, because disturbing evidence can complicate coverage. If you are outside the recall but inside a powertrain warranty, airtight maintenance records matter. Dealers and manufacturers use them to confirm oil change cadence and viscosity compliance. One missing receipt can slow or sink reimbursement. For oil consumption trucks, the dollars hide in resale. A truck that needs a quart every 1,000 miles spooks buyers and lenders. A documented repair or settlement payout can stabilize a private party sale price. Over a 5-year horizon, that spread can be several $1,000s compared with an uncorrected, undocumented vehicle. You do not need dramatic numbers to make a smart choice. You need clean paperwork and the correct mechanism for your engine and model year. Now, a reality check on messaging. Owners often see videos or posts that claim GM paid $888 million to settle. The public filings don't show that. The $888 million number is a GM factory investment for a future V8 program in New York. The safety matter on L87s resulted in a recall and stop sale, not a 9-figure settlement to owners. The major recent settlement is $150 million, and it addresses oil consumption on older 5.3-liter engines after years of litigation, not the 6.2-liter bearing failures. Keeping those lanes separate helps you avoid predatory fixes and bad advice. What about AFM/DFM as a concept? Disabling cylinders at light load is a reasonable idea that many brands use in different forms. The details decide reliability. GM's bulletins acknowledge failure modes around lifter pins, oil aeration, and lifter collapse. Other manufacturers have their own deactivation designs with their own trade-offs. The lesson is not that cylinder deactivation is always bad. The lesson is that added complexity adds failure modes, and those modes must be tested and supported over real duty cycles. Owners should expect stronger goodwill policies when complexity fails early, because the savings in fuel are marketed up front, while the risk often shows up years later. So where does this leave GM? And where does it leave you? On the corporate side, the company is investing heavily in the next generation of small block V8s, even as it balances electrification plans. That new spend signals a long horizon for combustion trucks and SUVs, and a need to rebuild confidence around durability. On the safety side, the L87 recall is the necessary first step. Define the population, inspect, and replace where needed. On the consumer protection side, the Sierra settlement shows courts will force remedies when chronic design issues generate real economic loss. These are not contradictions. They are the normal outcomes when a large manufacturer supports several engine lines over many years with evolving technology, suppliers, and regulations. If you want a durable GM V8, you should use model year knowledge, not slogans. The Gen 4 oil consumption problem lives mostly in older 5.3-liter trucks and SUVs. The lifter collapse problem tends to track AFM/DFM hardware and certain calibrations across years. The sudden bearing failures target a defined slice of 6.2-liter L87 production. Each has a different sound, a different code path, and a different remedy. That is why a blanket, avoid all GM V8s, is not useful advice. A better rule is to verify your engine code, check for campaigns by VIN, and align your documents to the right defect story. What should owners do today? First, run the VIN against NHTSA for open recalls. If 25V-274 applies, schedule inspection when your dealer's pipeline opens. Second, gather service records into a single PDF or folder, oil changes, top-offs, DTC printouts, and dealer notes. Third, describe symptoms with precision. Sudden power loss and no codes suggests bearing failure. Persistent tick with P0300 points to lifters. Mysterious oil use points to the older 5.3-liter issue. Fourth, avoid speculative fixes that erase evidence. Keep the truck in the state the dealer or inspector expects to see. These steps cost little and protect thousands. A word on fuel, oil, and break-in myths. None of the official documents for the L87 bearing failures point to owner oil choice as a root cause. The filings talk about manufacturing contamination and quality escapes addressed by mid-2024. For the lifter bulletins, Oil aeration and lifter internals are named, but the fix is parts, not a magic oil that cures collapse. For the old 5.3-liter, some owners report improvement using updated parts and revised service routines. But the legal theory the court accepted was design-related economic loss, not owner abuse. Treat internet miracle fixes accordingly. Let's finish with the logic that matters when emotion runs hot. Reliability is not a brand trait. It is a stack of design choices, supplier quality, process control, and field support. When one layer slips, the others must catch failures fast. Regulators exist to handle true safety hazards, like sudden loss of power. Courts exist to handle economic loss when chronic defects erode value. Owners who keep records and speak the right language, engine code, DTCS, bulletins, campaign numbers, get results. Owners who argue by memes and headlines get frustrated. The system is slow, but it answers to facts. This also tells a bigger story about how cars are built and bought. Efficiency features like cylinder deactivation can save fuel on a test cycle and still add failure risk if components stick or starve. Tight clearances and thin oils can hit lab targets and still become vulnerable if manufacturing lets debris through. The cure is not nostalgia or panic. The cure is feedback loops that connect field failures to real fixes, and policy that makes disclosure quick and transparent. It is rational for buyers to be skeptical. It is also rational to separate one engine's problem from another and buy on the merits. If you own a GM V8 today, focus on your facts. Which engine? Which years? Which symptoms? Which campaign? The L87 recall exists and has a defined procedure. The Gen 4 5.3-liter settlement exists and has defined eligibility. The AFM/DFM lifter problem has official bulletins and parts-based repairs. The $888 million headline you keep seeing is a factory investment for future engines, not a payout. That distinction alone can save you hours of bad calls and thousands in wrong repairs. Tell me your year, model, engine code, mileage, and symptoms in the comments so I can point you to the right path. If you want more clear, honest breakdowns like this, subscribe.